All right, let's clear the last page here and get this done with. So on the last page, we start with a chisel, which is number 29. We have a whole bunch of chisels in our tool cabinet, and they're just very simple, old Buck Bros chisels. They're not a very high-end chisel, but they work just fine. In order for a chisel to work, the face of it, this back area, has to be perfectly flat first, and that has to then intersect with this beveled edge. When those two surfaces come together, that makes the edge across the top. That edge is very sharp, so when you're using a chisel, two hands always need to be behind the chisel as you're working it. The wood needs to be clamped down. You never use your hand to hold a piece of wood while you're chiseling towards yourself. That's a recipe for disaster. You will get hurt eventually. Don't do that. The other possibility of how to use a chisel correctly would be to hold on to the chisel with one hand and use a mallet or the cheek of a hammer, like a carpenter, in the other hand. A carpenter would use this cheek because you can use a very small swing and get control. You would not use the end of this because you have to swing more and you have less control when working in that fashion. That's absolutely okay as long as you have this metal cap here to protect the chisel. That's what we use these for. The other possibility of proper use would be to just use a mallet in contact with your chisel, bevel up or bevel down. Please make sure that as you're walking around with the chisels and you're handing them to people, you're doing that safely. Never walk around with a chisel like this and hand it to people like this. Always hand them the chisel with the handle first. And as you're walking around with the chisel, I like to see you guys hold on to the chisel in this particular fashion. Chisels down to your side. If you hold it like this, it's very difficult for you to hurt yourself in this way. And if for some reason you did trip, your hands would catch the chisel this way, and you don't have a risk of stabbing yourself if you landed on it. That's why this is considered a safer way to do that. If you're walking around with the chisel like this, pointing down, if you tripped, this would be most likely how you would end up tripping, and you'd end up landing on the chisel. That would be very dangerous. If you want to be even safer, it's a good practice to cut yourself a small piece of PVC pipe, stick the chisel in the pipe, and keep it sheathed while you're in transit or while you're moving around, or just storing it so you don't damage the edge. All right, number 30 is a putty knife. This is a great little tool, should be kept sharp and clean for spreading the putty and cleaning it off the surface. That putty is used to cover all those nail holes when you sink them with that nail set. The next tool we have over here is number 31, and it is a flathead screwdriver. There are several different types of screwdrivers. The flathead comes in different sizes, different widths, different thicknesses. Is also known as a common screwdriver. The next screwdriver we have is a Phillips screwdriver. It has this little cross shape as opposed to the flathead, which is just a flat blade. This particular screwdriver is like a kind of a T or a cross. This comes in several different sizes as well. I'll show you the difference between a number 1 and number 2. So this particular tip here is a number 2. This tip is a number 1. It's important to make sure you always have the right size screwdriver for the screw, or you will damage both the screwdriver and the screw, which makes it very hard to get out. There are larger sizes as well, number 3s and all kinds of stuff like that, and there are insulated screwdrivers. We have some cool screwdrivers in our cabinet for electrical work that have these black handles. They are not insulated, however, on the sleeves. Some will actually have insulation here so you don't shock yourself while doing electrical work. But the most common size of Phillips is a number 2, so you might want to know that for your quiz. The next tool we have here is 33, called a rasp, compared to 34, which is a file, and you should know the difference. So the file, let's take a look at the rasp first. The rasp has these large teeth on it, and these teeth are used for wood only, whereas a file has very small teeth, and this could be used for metal work and or woodworking. You want to make sure you only grab a file for metal, the rasp for wood. If you are wanting to do very smooth work with wood, you can use a file for that as well. But the safety thing you must know about these is that when you buy them, they don't come with a handle, and this back part of a file or a rasp is called the tang, and if you use this tool without it and you push hard and get stuck, this will puncture your palm. So we always put a handle on a file or a rasp to prevent from puncturing our palm with the tang. So those are files and rasps. Notice some also have rounded profiles where some are just flat and square. There are variations in all of them. Sometimes we have round ones as well. The round ones are known as a rat tail file or rat tail rasp, depending on the teeth. Most likely it's a file. This is a Japanese version known as a Shinto, and it has large teeth and small teeth made of hacksaw blades kind of bent together. And this cleans itself by tapping as opposed to having to take a wire brush and carefully cleaning out all the gunk that gets built up in them. Very cool tool. So that would not be used for metal, only wood as well. It's kind of like a rasp. The next tool, 35, is called a Yankee screwdriver. This is a Yankee screwdriver. It's a very neat little tool. This one has a number 1 Phillips bit on it. And as you hold on to the end, depending on how this little switch is set, you can put pressure on a screw. That would loosen it. That would tighten the screw and drive it down into the surface as you're pushing on it. And it's spring loaded, so it resets itself and you push down to turn it. This was kind of like pre-electric screwdrivers or drills. Very cool little tool. You can change the bits out. They come in different sizes. This is a slightly bigger one, and this one has a flathead on it. Great tool. It's called the Yankee screwdriver. 36 is a very simple tool. It's called a C-clamp. Let me take you over to our clamp closet real quick so we can take a look at all those tools. Alright, so excuse some of the we're getting stuff cleaned up, but we've got a lot of little tools over here that you'll need to know how to use. This is a C-clamp, and it is the shape of a C, I guess is why they call it that, but they come in different sizes. This one's a little smaller, it's an 8-inch, and the 8-inch is the maximum opening. Next we have a screw clamp, or a parallel screw clamp, and that works by either driving the two sides together or driving the two sides apart to open and close it. When you want to clamp onto something that's about this thickness, you want to close it until the back of the clamp, that's this area right here, is at that thickness. A little bit more. Okay. Then you verify that the front will still fit over that thickness. To actually do the clamping, you want the back clamp up towards you. The jaw goes right over the surface you're clamping, and then you can use leverage to really get a good firm grip of that as it pinches down. You want it to pinch. If they're flat, they won't grab very well. So ultimately, you want them to pinch a little bit. And that's a parallel screw clamp. The last one we have on our list is a bar clamp, and this is an I-beam bar clamp. The I-beam bar clamp actually has an I-beam shape on the bar. It's got this bottom and top clamping surface that allows you to wind on this threaded rod, closing the clamp until you squeeze all the glue out of something or hold it together very firmly. In order to reset this clamp, you will need to back this up until there's almost no space left here and the thread's all the way at the top. That way it's ready for the next person to use. You don't want to overdo this. You can put enough force, you are strong enough, to wind this all the way out and break the little pin that's right there in that hole, which holds these two parts together. So you want to be careful not to over tighten or over loosen, I should say, when resetting the clamps. Also make sure this will freely move up and down and that you've gotten all the glue off enough for the clamp to work properly. Then when you're done with it, you can put it back. All right, there's 38 tools. I hope you fill out your assignment just right and get full credit.